on this computer. All right, so I am here with Matthew Hines, who is assistant principal at Avon High School. So, Mr. Hines, could you kind of give us an introduction of what you have been doing in your administrative career?
Yeah. Hey, Dr. Wills, good to see you. I am Matt Hines. I have been a assistant principal for, I think this is my 11th year now, no, 10th year. And I taught high school math for 6 years before that. And I taught at a small school at Western Boone for 6 years. And then I got my first administrative job as an assistant principal at Western Middle School, which is a 6th through 8th grade building near Kokomo in Howard County. And then I was there for just under 3 years. And then I went to my alma mater, which is Frankfort High School, and was at Frankfort High School for just under 5 years. And then I have been at Avon now that I'm on my 4th year here at Avon, and really, really enjoying my time here. But that's a little bit about my time. It's kind of neat to be at a middle school, and then I've been at that had about 750, 800 kids. Frankfort High School had about 900 kids, and obviously here at Avon we're at like 3,350. And so had some various sizes, various levels that have given me some good experiences.
Awesome. So we're talking about the master schedule, and I know Mr. Frank Meyer, I know he's the one that builds a lot of the master schedule. But I know as an assistant principal, you probably have some idea or some influence on how the master schedule comes together a little bit. So could you explain like what criteria that you know of that is used to design the master schedule?
Yeah. Here at Avon, or do you want to hear about kind of my past experiences as well?
Oh, that works too. Both. That'd be awesome.
Okay, so I'll kind of start back from my middle school. So at middle school, it's very different because typically in middle school we had teams, so all the kids were on the same. Like they had like 6th grade had 2 teams, 7th grade had 2 teams, 8th grade had 2 teams, and so it was a little bit easier to schedule because you knew that there was like your 4 content areas, and then those teams would then rotate to their specials at different times, and so scheduling at the middle school level was just significantly easier. The dilemma you had with scheduling at the middle school is when students were requesting teams, because you only had 2 teams. So a lot more requests at smaller schools to be with one team or the other. When I went to Frankfort High School, I can distinctly remember being in our conference room, and we literally had these huge sheets of paper out with boxes and period 1, period 2, and we literally by hand would write in all of our courses and what period, what course would go. And I always remember saying, surely there's a computer that could do this. Like surely, and we had Power School at the time. Surely Power School can do this. And our Power School person, nope, we don't have that ability. And I was like, I just always would shake my head like, this is crazy that we have to do this by hand. However, the nice part about doing it by hand is you learn a lot about just thinking through how to organize classes. And so, for example, at Frankfort with 900 kids, we may have only had 2 AP chemistry sections or 2 AP calc sections. And a lot of times those kids would overlap each other. And so we had to be very conscientious of where we put those classes in the schedule. So if you put AP chemistry first period, you wouldn't want to put AP calc first period. But if orchestra was first period, we knew we had a lot of orchestra kids in AP calc and AP chem. And so we couldn't put that. So you always had to be thinking about kind of what kids made up what programs and what other activities they were in, and which ones could only be in certain periods of the day. And a lot of times that was driven by what teachers you had. So like even here at Avon, our orchestra teacher has to go over to the middle school, so it can only be offered at certain periods of the day. And so when I was at Frankfort, it really helped me kind of broaden my view of how you have to kind of plan and schedule everything. And so we would literally have 4 or 5 of us in a room, counselors, assistant principal, and we would spend like 3 days literally by hand writing out the schedule. And then we would cross-reference. Something that I had our group do is we started cross-referencing electives, because what we would find is that if you didn't look at how many electives were offered first, second, third, fourth, fifth, sixth, seventh periods, and maybe you had too many electives in 4th period or too many electives in 5th period, then you might have a period where you didn't have space, you didn't have space for where kids would go. And so we would cross-reference both vertically and horizontally on our sheets just to make sure that we had enough electives for the right grade level of kids in each class period, so that when you actually inputted all of this into the computer, which we did by hand, we'd manually enter like the section into the computer. Once we then committed it, you wanted to get 80+% of your kids scheduled without any conflicts, and then you'd start working from those conflicts. So that was Frankfort. Then I came to Avon and found out that what I thought was possible with PowerSchool. And so as soon as I found that out, I informed my Frankfort colleagues that they have that available. And so at Avon, because I'm not quite as directly involved with it, I really just look at my specific departments. So I oversee math, which my math department has 22 teachers, PE, which has 7 teachers, and then our library as well. And so I'm really more looking at just those like 29, 30 teachers and what they have. And really what we're more looking at, we're not as worried about where they go, which period they go. We're just more worried about that we have the right number of sections. And so we'll look at Algebra 1, for example, and we'll say, okay, we know that by our course requests, we have, 600 kids that need Algebra 1. And we want to have a ratio of, 24 kids per class, per section. So this is how many sections we will need of Algebra 1. And so then we get a spreadsheet, and Mr. Meyer, who I know you spoke with earlier, he will send us a spreadsheet with kind of those numbers on it. And then we start playing with it to make sure that our staffing equals out. So sometimes you have to make some decisions on increasing the class size in one area in order to make sure you have enough sections for your teachers. I don't know if I'm explaining that well. Does that make sense?
Oh, it definitely makes sense.
So, so really, and the hard part for us at Avon is we're a growing district, whereas at Frankfort, we knew we were kind of steady in our numbers. And so that's the tricky part is that you're also not just factoring in the current number of students, but knowing that you're going to grow, because typically, we're going to increase 100 kids throughout the year. So you've kind of got to, create some wiggle room in your schedule for that as well. Other odd things that you have to think about when I think about schedule. So let's go to the PE department is space.
Mhm.
I may need, I may have 3 teachers that teach PE 1, but they can't all have PE 1 at the same time. If I have my advanced basketball group or, a different, or my team sports or physical fitness, because I have to be a lot more strategic just because of what gyms they're located in. And so, we actually do PE typically kind of by hand because it's a smaller department, and it really matters what space they're using to make sure that you're not overloading, scheduling 4 classes and we don't have gyms for those classes.
All right.
You want me to keep going?
Yeah, I mean, I'm learning from you.
Yeah. So in math, the thing that's been interesting with math is that the way we do it at Avon with our algebra kids and geometry kids is if you fail the first semester of algebra, then you actually have to go back and retake the first section second semester with the teacher. So, but the problem is that when you go build your master schedule, we don't know how many kids are going to fail. We can, kind of predict a number based on what happened last year. And so we actually have to, we kind of have to build some like ghost sections, I guess you could call it, that are in the schedule next semester, but don't have any kids in it, because we don't know which kids will end up placing in there. And so at the end of the semester, our counseling team has some work to do because they have to go through and see who has failed, and then they move them into that geometry A or algebra A section of class. And so then the problem with that is that we try to keep our kids with the same teacher first semester and second semester so that they have the same math teacher all year long. But it doesn't work perfectly, because if one of my teachers, if I'm teaching a class and I then have to remove my algebra B and I teach an algebra A, where does my first semester kids go? Well, they get dispersed amongst other other groups or other teachers. And so
Right.
that's kind of one of those interesting factors that come into play. But I always try to look at with my math specifically, I'd rather make larger numbers in my advanced classes and smaller numbers in my regular level classes. I think that helps our teachers. I think sometimes it helps with some of your discipline problems, because typically your advanced level, your AP level kids are not your disciplines issues. And so when you're trying to think about just the overall culture of the building, really trying to reduce the class sizes of your of kind of some of your lower level classes, like my regular classes, is what I try to do.
All right. So how does the building of a master schedule affect instruction? I know that sounds like a weird question, but like when you're making, when the administrative team and or Mr. Meyer are making this master schedule, how does it affect the instruction and or the needs for certain staff and personnel?
Yeah, I mean, I think, that when we start looking at that, the spreadsheets, that's really what guides us on how many teachers we need to add, because we've added teachers every year I've been here. We add teachers, and I foresee that just continuing here in the near future. And so sorry, I'm getting a phone call, so I'm going to just tell them to give me a second. Uh, I sorry. So we when I think of driving who we choose to add, or what areas we add, that really is driven by those numbers that we initially get. And fortunately with the way we do it, and ultimately, how we did it at Frankfurt by hand is just not even an option here with the number
Right.
of courses and number of teachers we have. So, you really have to have that computer system work. But the other part that's nice about our the PowerSchool system, is that the students have to input their choices in PowerSchool ahead of time. And so that's really what gives us that information on how to determine what to go. But I think that's how it impacts instruction, because you're ultimately, if you make a wrong decision, you may end up having 32, 33 kids in a class, in a class, which is not good for the teacher morale. And it's definitely not always good for kids either. So it absolutely impacts instruction. I also think the other thing that impacts instruction is who do you choose to teach what subject.
Right.
So, in my math department, we have to make a decision on who teaches algebra 1, who teaches algebra 2, who teaches pre-calculus. And you're trying to balance what's best for kids, but also what's best for your teachers as well. You don't one thing that we always look at is we don't want our teachers having more than 2 preps, if at all possible. So I don't want my teachers teaching more than 2 courses. And I think out of our 22 teachers, I think 21 out of our 22 teachers have just 2 classes to prepare for in the math department, which to me leads to a better culture. And if you're not trying to prepare for multiple different classes. And so that's the puzzle that we have to put on the back end. And one of the things that we always do is we survey our teachers and say, hey, rank these classes in order of which ones you would like to teach. And we ask them to give us some feedback on kind of how they're going, just to get information that helps us then build that schedule on top of just our own observations as well.
Okay. So when we make this master schedule, is the focus primarily on maximizing student learning?
Maximizing student learning. I mean, to me, maximizing student learning is really going to come down to what the physical instruction that happens in the class. So I would say the goal is to maximize student learning, but I think I would be false if I said that that's exactly how every decision is made. Sometimes you're kind of tied to making certain decisions based on the logistics of the building. For example, our Area 31 kids have to be out of school a certain amount of time in the morning and the afternoon, which then can affect where your classes go. And so you're trying to make the best decision to operate your school, which I think does maximize learning. I think it probably does. And then what teachers are teaching what schedule, I think definitely maximizes learning. But ultimately that learning really occurs in the classroom. And so, and hopefully with our, collaborative teams, no matter what teacher's teaching it, the goal is to have, a great experience in no matter what class you're in. And then if you're not learning something, or that you're getting remediated during the class, and if you're doing great, that you're getting enriched during the class.
So right now we know that Avon High School is like a is like a t-shirt where the button is about to pop off right now because we are popping at the seams with so many students. Um, and I know you are a big part of the building project that's about to happen within the next, I would say probably this next semester or next year at around this time. How will that change the way that we actually have to go about our master schedule? Is that going to make things easier? Is it going to make things harder? Will it change the facilities and things that we have here to maximize everything that we can get out of our master schedule?
Yeah, I mean, I think ultimately the construction process will probably end up being some headaches at certain points because I'm sure parts of the building will end up getting shut down and we'll lose rooms. And so I think during the construction process, it will be a challenge at certain points because, you know, typical rooms that we may have used may not be able to be used, and we'll have to find a different place for them. Now, I will say that, you know, fortunately, I think we have one teacher that's like a traveling teacher right now, I would say. And, you know, fortunately, most of our teachers have their own, you know, home-based classroom. And now I think over the next couple of years, as we're going through the building project, we're going to have more teachers that have to be that traveling teacher. But I do believe that we still have some capacity, due to the fact that we can have traveling teachers. Now, that's not an ideal situation for anybody, and I don't really wish that on people. But that may just be what we have to do. But the first thing, actually, and we just had a construction meeting yesterday, and one of the prioritizations right now is to make sure that the spaces that we are kind of outlining on the blueprints match the needs that we have. So, for example, labs like science labs, you know, you can't just go in and say, oh, we're going to build 6 science labs in this $90 million renovation. Like, you just can't do that. You have to figure out, well, how many science labs do we actually need, based on the number of labs we have now, the anticipated enrollment, et cetera. And so you're really looking kind of programmatically about what you have, and then you're going to make decisions based on that. And so, yes, we are busting at the seams, but this will give us, you know, I think we'll have eventually, probably in 4 years, we'll have plenty of space for a little while, until we kind of reach probably closer to 2030, and then we'll have to kind of relook at what our next steps are. So, yes, the planning process really does affect. It's more affecting which courses that we offer, and kind of thinking about the programs that we offer and how to best fit them in our building and location of where they actually go in the building, because proximity matters. I mean, no matter what you say, proximity matters. So, you know, we can't just build a new addition on the south side, and that's where we put our orchestra room, and a new orchestra room when orchestra's on the far west side. I mean, that just doesn't make sense. So you really got to kind of look at that and strategically figure out what works best.
For sure. I know we're running low on time because you got to get ready for your doctoral classes. But one last question I have for you in terms of, because right now we're working on professional learning communities, and we're working on making a guaranteed viable curriculum for our students. What in the mass, if there was any place that you could put teacher collaboration in the master schedule, would you, and where would you possibly put it at?
Yeah, so I like the model. We did this at Frankfurt, and then we just started doing it here, is the before school model. At Frankfurt, we didn't alter our schedule at all. We just asked our kids to come later. And so, and if they rode the bus, they got to school at the normal time, and they just had some time for an extra study hall that was supervised in the cafeteria. But our teachers had time to plan, and that happened every Monday and Friday. And that was a really, really good model. I like ours now. Every Wednesday morning, our teachers have time to just focus on their planning. So I think I wouldn't build it into the day. I don't know which one's better. Is before school better? Is after school better? I think before school better is because you're more fresh. But I also think it creates animosity for teachers, because I know people are late, just like kids are late, teachers are late. And I think that creates some animosity towards each other. Whereas if it's after school, you're already here, so you're not really going to be late to it. But I also think you could be drained from your day. And so I think the way we have it makes a lot of sense. One thing that I didn't mention about, you know, teacher collaboration for us, and I don't know if Mr. Meyer did, but one thing that we have been doing that we're talking about not doing is all of our core areas have prep at the same time. Did he talk about that at all?
He did, yeah.
And so, that adds some, when you just think about the survival mode of the high school and or school in general, one of the first things you just need is coverage in classes. And so that's been one of our conversations, is that because we just don't have a lot of subs right now, if all of our math teachers have the same prep, then when a math teacher's out, we can't get a math teacher to fill that position. Whereas if we knew that if all of our classes were all over the board, we may be able to have a math teacher cover a math class. So so that's another thing that you have to take into account. But ultimately, I think either before or after school, it makes the most sense so you don't disrupt the day, or shortening your day a little bit for kids is really the main way to do it.
For sure. Well,
I gotta go, man. Thank you so much.
For sure. Thank you, man. I appreciate it.
Have a good one.
You too.